Halloween Resurrection is considered the worst film in the entire Halloween franchise. The Internet Movie Database user rating is sitting at an abysmal 3.9 out of 10. Ouch. The Rotten Tomatoes audience score is only 25%. The Tomato Meter critic score, which everyone makes a big deal out of these days, is sitting at only 12%. Halloween Resurrection routinely makes the bottom of the list with ranking videos, and YouTube is filled with content dedicated to bashing the film. Jamie Lee Curtis has called the movie a, quote, complete joke, and Halloween creator John Carpenter himself has even weighed in, stating, quote, I watched the one in that house, with all the cameras. Oh my God. Oh Lord God. And then the guy gives the speech at the end about violence. What the hell? Oh my Lord, I couldn't believe it. End quote. So there you have it. Halloween Resurrection is clearly the worst film in the long-running franchise, right?
Wrong.
What if I told you that not only is Halloween Resurrection a good film, it's actually one of the better films in the Halloween series? What would you say to that?
No! No!
Now wait a second. Before you give this video a thumbs down and leave a nasty comment, let me explain myself. I know your criticisms, and I know all the issues people have with this film, so I'm gonna go point by point and defend it. This is gonna take some time, so pull up a chair and get comfortable. And maybe, just maybe, after I've presented my defense, you might be so inclined to give this movie another chance. But before I get to all of that, it's necessary to first go back to the beginning, all the way back to 2002 to be exact. Are you ready? Let's go.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
July of 2002. George W. Bush was president. The country was still reeling from the 9/11 terror attacks 10 months earlier. The top-rated programs of the year were CSI and Friends, and I was 3 years out of high school and still full of hopes and dreams, long before being beaten down by the crushing realities of life. At that time, we still had dial-up internet, which was slow and frustrating at times, but I have to say, I do kind of miss that classic dial-up tone. Back in those days, the main source of information for any and all news on the upcoming Halloween 8 was the HalloweenMovies.com website. Now the film went through many titles, including Halloween H2K, which was a spin on the whole Y2K craze of the late 90s. Halloween Homecoming was the title for the longest, until the producers eventually changed it to Halloween Resurrection. Kind of a boring title, I have to admit. As a die-hard fan of this franchise, I would constantly check the website for updates. I still remember when they finally released a publicity photo of the new Michael Myers himself. And damn, I was impressed. That summer, leading up to the film's release, the hype machine really picked up steam.
Everyone can see you. Everyone can hear you.
Wait, what just happened?
But on July 12th, no one
Michael.
can help you. Halloween Resurrection.
Are you scared?
No.
Rated R. In theaters everywhere. Friday, July 12th.
I was subscribed to Fangoria magazine back in the day, and when I received issue number 214 in my mailbox, I was pretty friggin' excited. The July 2002 issue teased the upcoming summer monster movie madness. Halloween Resurrection sat front and center. Michael Myers, internet hacker. The cover features the dragon-filled Reign of Fire, Men in Black 2, and the giant killer spider flick, Eight-Legged Freaks. Inside, there's an ad for the Attic Expeditions, a movie I still haven't seen. Looks good though. Available June 18th on DVD and VHS. Yes, back in 2002, VHS was still a thing, although for not much longer. The Postal Zone has fan letters on the recently released Jason X, and the reaction was mixed. It's interesting that both Friday the 13th and Halloween entered the new millennium with entries that strive to bring the franchises into the future. Jason Voorhees into outer space, and Michael Myers into the internet realm. Reign of Fire is covered within, which I actually saw in theaters. Good movie. Another I saw in theaters and enjoyed was Eight-Legged Freaks. The summer of 2002 was actually a solid time for movies. A lot of good stuff came out and provided a nice escape from the terrorism fears at the time. But the movie I was most excited for, of course, was Halloween Resurrection on page 40, Halloween in the Dead of Summer. It was pretty hard, even then, for me to wrap my head around the fact that we were getting a Halloween movie in July. Even the previous film, Halloween H2O, came out in August. Still weird, but at least it was late summer with that one, instead of right smack in the middle. The Resurrection coverage was fantastic and really got me pumped for the film. I was especially struck by the interview with the new Michael Myers, Brad Lorre. He mentions how he studied the previous Halloween films and wanted to emulate the original shape, Nick Castle. He really seemed to care about the character and was honored to play him. Honestly, his words really won me over. Oh, and there's an interesting bit about Busta Rhymes that the Fangoria reporter witnessed. When preparing to film a scene, Buster apparently got a call from someone and was screaming and dropping the F-bomb at the guy on the phone. Director Rick Rosenthal called for more rehearsals, and one of Busta's bodyguards eventually went to the Fangoria reporter and told him that the rapper turned star agreed to be interviewed, but only for 15 minutes. He ended up being very kind and gracious to the reporter, and comes off as a huge horror fan, but I wonder who ticked him off so bad on the phone. But yeah, I was very excited to see Halloween Resurrection. The film opened in theaters on July 12th, 2002. Now the Fangoria article mentioned the opening being July 19th, but the producers apparently changed their minds and decided to go head-to-head with Reign of Fire, which probably wasn't a good idea in hindsight. Now I saw Halloween Resurrection with a few others on Saturday, July 13th, 2002 at 9:40 p.m. I wonder why I didn't go on opening night. I must have had to work late or something, but at least I was there opening weekend. I remember the theater being packed that night, and I was worried that it was going to be a rowdy and loud crowd. I hate when people talk and are disruptive during a movie. But something interesting happened. The crowd didn't chat throughout the movie or anything, which is exactly what happened when I saw Jason X a few months earlier. During this screening of Halloween Resurrection, the audience was into it. They laughed at all the right spots, screamed at the right spots, and then did something I had never witnessed before or since. They actually clapped and cheered when the movie was over. I'm not kidding. This packed audience absolutely loved the film, and so did I. The group I went with did too, and I remember logging onto the internet later that night and posting some thoughts on movie message boards. I was very happy with the movie, and I honestly thought that most people liked it. It wasn't until later on that I realized the movie had a lot of detractors. Halloween Resurrection opened at number 4 at the box office that weekend and earned a little over $12.2 million. It was beat out by Reign of Fire and Road to Perdition, which had their opening weekends as well. Number 1 was Men in Black 2, which was in its second weekend. It was a packed summer movie season, and I really wonder why Resurrection wasn't just released in the fall, closer to Halloween. But even still, the movie didn't do bad at all. According to BoxOfficeMojo.com, Halloween Resurrection ended up earning $37.6 million worldwide. That may not sound like a lot, but Resurrection only cost $13 million to make, and the $37.6 million earnings in 2002 would be the equivalent of over $60 million today. So no, Halloween Resurrection was by no means a financial failure. In a crowded summer movie season, it still managed to make a nice profit.
People, let's do it.
Now I could be wrong, but it sure didn't seem like people hated Halloween Resurrection at the time, at least not in the horror circles I used to frequent. It really seems like all the hate came about much later, but again, maybe I'm wrong. Regardless of when it happened, a lot of people, most people, really seem to hate this movie. But not me.
Oh, good for you!
Let me explain. Oh, and massive spoilers are ahead. Seriously, I'm going to go over every aspect of this movie and spoil all of it. So if you haven't seen this movie, do not watch this. You still there? Okay. Right off the bat, Resurrection had me with an excellent rendition of the classic Halloween theme. The score for the previous film, Halloween H2O, was pretty disappointing to me. But here, the theme sounds amazing. The score was composed by Danny Lux, who has mainly done TV scores before and since. Now he's done some movies too, but no horror stuff, besides this. But he was definitely a strange choice for composer, but he delivered here. The Halloween theme is used a few times throughout the film, as well as a creepy, slow version of it. I do have to say, it was disappointing that the other classic Halloween themes weren't utilized though. The Laurie theme, Myers House theme, and Shaped Stocking theme definitely were missed. But overall, it's a solid score. Now the opening 17 minutes of this movie tends to be pretty controversial. It ties up the loose ends left with the climax of H2O and wraps up the Laurie Strode storyline before getting down to the main plot. Some feel it's too disconnected from the rest of the film, and others hate the fact that Laurie Strode dies. I never had a problem with any of that. Look, I understand some fans being upset about Laurie dying, but Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to do the films anymore. She was contractually obligated to appear in this movie, and honestly, fans are lucky she even agreed to come back for Halloween H2O. And at this point, she's back for 3 more movies anyway. Granted, it's a different timeline, but why be upset about Laurie dying here? Halloween Resurrection ended up not being Jamie Lee Curtis's final appearance in the franchise after all. So what's the big deal? And it's a worthy death.
Hello, Michael.
She faces off with Michael, puts up a good fight, and stops living in fear. And I know many people had an issue with the explanation of Michael surviving the end of H2O, but the idea of him switching clothes with a paramedic was settled on during the making of that film 4 years before this film was released. It's even set up when Michael weirdly grabs his head at the end of that movie and reaches for Laurie. I know many people say it's a cheat and cheapens the ending of H2O, but what do you expect? Halloween H2O was never going to be the final film, just like the upcoming Halloween Ends is not going to be the final movie. This series is going to go on forever. If that bothers you so much, well, maybe you shouldn't be watching this franchise then. Halloween Resurrection was saddled with explaining the ending to H2O and concluding the Laurie Strode storyline, and quickly. Jamie Lee Curtis was only obligated for a 30-second cameo in this movie, but she agreed to expand her role for the opening section. Resurrection was dealt a tough hand, and the film handled it perfectly, in my opinion. I mean, what else could the makers have done? And the entire opening 17 minutes is fantastic. Jamie Lee Curtis gives it her all. She doesn't simply phone in her performance here. I like the crumpled picture of Josh Hartnett's character on the wall, and Laurie being a little nutty after the previous film, and sitting at the window, staring out, silently waiting. It's a great callback to the original Halloween, and kind of brings things full circle in a way. Brad Laurie is fantastic as the Shape, and his mask looks awesome. It's a vast improvement over the changing masks and visible eyes in Halloween H2O. I don't want to pick on H2O, because I do really like that film, but I think Resurrection is superior. The opening sequence, and really the entire film, is beautifully directed by Rick Rosenthal, who had previously helmed the original Halloween 2. We've got fluid camera movements and tracking shots, and best of all, blue gels and lighting to the dark scenes. It harkens back to the original Halloween, and anyone familiar with my channel knows I just love that look. A lot of talent went into the technical side of this film, and it really elevates things. I will say, the film originally opened immediately with an old Myers family film reel, and it definitely should have stayed in the movie. Plus, it was only like 40 seconds long and would have been a cool little scene. After the opening sequence, the title card is finally displayed, and we immediately get to the main storyline. A group of college students agree to investigate the Myers house on Halloween night, live on the internet. This is another area that many fans have criticized, feeling that the storyline is cheesy and outdated. I completely disagree. Resurrection was actually pretty ahead of its time with this concept. Ghost hunter shows are all over TV now, and reality TV is still a thing. Resurrection came out right at the beginning of all this stuff. And again, the storyline is still relevant today, with the quote-unquote reality TV being manipulated for ratings and excitement. Hell, even the news and everything else is manipulated these days. Just take it from Dangertainment entrepreneur Freddie Harris.
America don't like reality, first of all. Second of all, they think the shit is boring. You know what I mean? They want the little razzle dazzle, a little pizzazz, a little thrill in their life. You know what I mean? And us being the ones that give it to them, I don't see nothing wrong with that.
I've heard people complain about the technology, saying it was outdated even when the film was released in 2002. Again, how is that a problem? Is the original Halloween outdated now? What about the sequel set in the 80s and 90s? Yeah, the tech is outdated. The lead, Sarah, is walking around with a Palm Pilot. Who cares? I like that aspect. I love watching movies or shows that are so of a certain time period. And this film has that feeling. Not just clunky computers and cameras, but the style and look and feel. The tone even. I love that. The early 2000s were probably the last really identifiable and unique time period in our culture, like the 80s and 90s and decades before. Nowadays, it's all kind of the same, but Resurrection has that throwback feel to a different time. Shows set in the 80s like Stranger Things are all the rage now because people want to experience that nostalgia. Well, Resurrection has a lot of nostalgia too. I never understood the criticism that the movie was outdated. The plotline is actually a lot of fun here. I love when characters are trapped or isolated in a location. And Resurrection has that, with the cast trapped in the dilapidated Myers house on Halloween night. Now I do wish there was a scene that showed the house being boarded up and sealed, like they do during investigations on Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans.
The three of us will travel to some of the most highly active paranormal locations where we will spend an entire night being locked down from dusk until dawn.
There was actually a line of dialogue in the original shooting script that mentioned the doors being locked and windows boarded up, but that line is not in the final film. I mean, look, we can see that the windows are boarded and the doors are locked, but it would have really added to the fun to have a scene showing everything sealed up tight. Oh, and I do think the group should have arrived at the Myers house at night instead of during the day. Now, night falls pretty quickly, but again, the atmosphere of a nighttime arrival would have been better. In really capitalizing on the internet theme, there's a subplot about a high school kid having an internet romance with our lead, Sarah. Well, she says they're just friends, but he sees it as something more. Plus, college student Sarah doesn't know he's only in high school. I like that little subplot. It adds something new to the proceedings, and it's kinda sweet in a way. And it also sets up for the character, who goes by the screen name Deckard, to communicate with Sarah during the climax, telling her where Michael is hiding while watching the live stream online with a group of teenagers. The interior of the Myers house is suitably creepy, and I love the discovery of the underground lair where Michael has been living. One character finds half-eaten rats, which harkens back to Michael eating the dog in the original Halloween.
What is that? It's a dog. It's still warm. He got hungry.
It's good stuff, and it explains where Michael was hiding out in this timeline in between Halloween 2 and H2O. Another thing I love about the film is the gore. Now, it's not Halloween Kills style bloody, but it has some excellent death scenes. It actually reminds me of an 80s slasher movie in a way, with people being offed in creative and unique ways. Now let's talk about the cast. There's a certain individual in this film that gets a lot of hate, and I'll get to him in a moment. But first, I want to go over the others. As I mentioned earlier, Brad Loree is fantastic as the Shape. He's got Michael's movements and mannerisms down, and he honestly plays Michael to perfection here. I really wish he had been able to continue on in the role for a few more movies. Sarah, played by Bionica Kalick, is great as the lead. There's clearly an effort to make her a new Laurie Strode type character, and I think she does a great job here. I do wish she had a bit more to do though. There was more in the original shooting script that would have fleshed out her character a bit more, including some stuff that showed Michael targeting and stalking her, much like he did to Laurie in the original Halloween. But it was all trimmed out, unfortunately. But even still, she makes a good impression. I also really like the Deckard character, and again, I like the subplot and actor Ryan Merriman, who actually did a good amount of horror stuff in the early to mid 2000s. He gives a great and likable performance here. Once again, some character stuff was lost with him and his friend, but it's all still pretty effective. The rest of the cast isn't as developed as these two, but aspiring chef Rudy, played by Sean Patrick Thomas, is very likable. Plus, he gets an awesome knife fight scene with Michael. And Jen, played by Katie Sackhoff, before she hit the big time, gives it her all. This really could have been a nothing role, but she did her best to make the character memorable.
You are like this close to getting voted off the island.
Now the others don't have as much to do, but they do have some good lines and moments here and there. The characters at times do kind of come off like they are from a late 90s teen sex comedy or something, but again, it's from the time that this movie was made. It was written in 2000 and shot mostly in 2001, when those types of teen comedies were all the rage. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the person that gets the most flack and the one that critics of this film really despise. Busta Rhymes as Freddie Harris. People always go on and on about how much they hate his character and how he turned the film and the Halloween series into a joke. Most already know the story, but when the film was originally written and shot, Busta had a more minor role and actually died. But apparently test audiences like the character, and we all know how much the Weinsteins like to reshoot and tweak and delay movies after they've finished filming them. So reshoots happened that beefed up Busta Rhymes' role and allowed him to survive the film. But was Busta Rhymes that bad? I'm gonna say no. And I'm going to defend his character.
The fuck are you doing?
Here's the thing. Busta as Freddy brought a sense of humor to the film and the franchise not seen since, I don't know, the comedy cops from Halloween 5, I guess.
I'm so embarrassed.
It's what we're here for.
Rescue cats.
Find dogs.
That's our job.
And we love it.
But seriously, he doesn't suddenly turn the movie into a comedy or anything, but he did bring in some humor, and I laughed. I laughed at lines like this.
You hit me like I murdered your fucking mother or something. Relax, man.
And that speech he gave at the end that John Carpenter was ragging on, I enjoyed it.
Michael Myers is a killer shark. Baggy-ass overalls.
These were all ad-libs by Busta Rhymes, by the way. They don't appear anywhere in the final shooting script. And they're funny.
Fuck's sake, man, you're amateur.
Freddie Harris really didn't come across as very likable in the script, but Busta Rhymes made him likable, at least to me. And again, it's not like he's the star. Yes, he figures prominently in the climax, but he's absent for a chunk of the film. Don't get me wrong, he's there and he is a main character, but it's not like he's in every scene or anything. And when he's there, I laughed.
Looking a little crispy over there, Mikey. Like some chicken fried, motherfucker.
Most of the humor comes from Busta, but there were other funny lines too.
You trying to fucking kill me? Come on. You like sushi, motherfucker, huh?
You know, Michael gets called a mother effer a lot in this movie. Now, a lot of this stuff is cheesy and reminds me of 80s one-liners, and that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Now, I will say this, there is a scene that's heavily criticized, and I do agree with the criticism. And it's, of course, the scene where Busta trash talks Michael. So there's a scene where we see two Michaels, which the movie theater went absolutely wild for, by the way. But it turns out one is Freddy in disguise, trying to scare people. Now, he doesn't realize that this is the real Michael. He thinks it's one of the camera guys screwing around or something. So he trash talks the guy, and it's just too much.
I said, what you looking at me like that for? Huh? You don't get it? You don't get it? Your shit ain't working up there or something?
The scene was actually much more subtle in the shooting script, but here, Buster adds to it, which just goes too far. Michael would have snapped his neck. So yeah, it doesn't spoil the film for me or anything, but I do understand the anger towards this scene. Now, interestingly enough, the audience I saw this with in theaters loved this scene. They thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So this sequence did seem to work, at least at the time, for the general movie-going audience that Dimension Films was trying to appeal to. But for me, it just didn't.
God damn. What the hell somebody gotta do to get a little decent help up in this motherfucker?
And yes, I know people hate the Kung Fu scene as well, but it is set up earlier that Freddy is a fan of Kung Fu, so he actually uses it against the shape.
So you wanna be on Dangertainment? Let's see what you got.
It's goofy, and even Michael seems amazed and embarrassed by what he's seen. But again, I thought it was funny.
You're unbelievable, man. You're unfucking believable.
And it is handled here much better than in the shooting script, which had the characters slamming each other into walls and stuff. I know many Halloween fans were bothered by the quote-unquote stunt casting of Busta Rhymes and even Tyra Banks. And yeah, it's a little strange having them in a Halloween movie. But I guess the studio wanted to appeal to a wider audience, and there's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, Busta brought a sense of humor to the film. And why is that such a bad thing? To have a Halloween film that's fun. Why does everything have to be so dour and depressing and serious? After this film, we got the Rob Zombie movies, which had animal torture and rape. Halloween 2018 had Michael snapping a little kid's neck. And Halloween Kills included a crazed mob chasing an innocent man to his death. Oh, and Jamie Lee Curtis said the upcoming Halloween Ends is going to tick a lot of people off. Director David Gordon Green originally mentioned that the movie was going to comment on COVID as well. Now he's kind of walked it back a bit, but if it does, I mean, that sounds like fun, right? It would have been like Halloween Resurrection dealing with the 9/11 terror attacks. I'll take fun escapist horror movies over divisive depressing stuff any day. Halloween Resurrection is the summer popcorn film in the Halloween franchise. It's good, fun, escapist entertainment. As I mentioned earlier, the movie ended up having some reshoots, but it wasn't as extensive as, say, Halloween 6 or Cursed. Now, Freddy was supposed to originally die by being beaten to death with a baseball bat, mistaken for Michael by one of the characters. And originally, it was Deckard that came in and saved Sarah from the burning shed. I actually like this ending better. In the final film, they never meet face to face. But there was a lot of stuff trimmed, including a scene where Michael steals that Firebird that was towed away earlier in the film. Now, some of it was cut for the better. Honestly, the scene where Michael steals the car was pretty goofy, but some of the other stuff that was trimmed would have been nice to keep. But with a few exceptions, I feel like the movie made mostly the right choices in the changes. For example, originally the character of Donna is running away from Michael in the tunnels, and she accidentally impales herself on a pipe. Now in the final film, Michael rams her onto it. And Tyra Banks' death scene was better left on the cutting room floor as well. Her performance and the way it was shot just didn't work.
Put him down there. Freddie, please. Okay, you got me. Freddie!
So yeah, Resurrection wasn't destroyed by reshoots like most Weinstein productions. There was some good stuff that was cut or changed, but overall, it's solid. Oh, and definitely watch the webcam special on the Blu-ray and DVD copies. It's a 45-minute or so version of the film, cut together entirely with the camera footage. Think a found footage mini Halloween film. Plus it includes deleted character scenes and alternate scenes as well. Check it out, it's a lot of fun. Director Rick Rosenthal shot multiple endings for the film with the idea of having each screening including a different ending. It's an interesting idea, but I'm glad they didn't go this route. It was fine for a movie like Clue, but not a Halloween film. And the final ending they used, with Michael in the morgue, was the best one for sure. I really do feel that Halloween Resurrection is a criminally underrated and misunderstood film. I know John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis hate it, but John Carpenter hates the original Halloween 2 as well. Halloween 2 is not only my favorite Halloween sequel, it's one of the best horror sequels of all time, in my opinion. And John Carpenter hates it. He even co-wrote and produced the movie. And as for Jamie Lee Curtis, she's talked bad about the original Halloween 2 as well, and even Halloween H2O. Once upon a time, she really loved H2O, but now she hates it. Look, I love John Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis, but their opinions on Halloween Resurrection really doesn't mean much to me. Well, I think that's about it. So what do you think?
I'm gonna fucking kick your fucking ass!
Look, if you hate Halloween Resurrection, that's fine. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's a perfect sequel. But I do really hope that this video might nudge people to watch the film again. It's been 20 years since Halloween Resurrection first graced us with its presence. And it's long past time to reevaluate this film, in my opinion. Watch it again with an open mind and really give it another chance. You just might be pleasantly surprised by it. Thank you for taking this trip down memory lane with me and for watching this defense of Halloween Resurrection. So drop me some comments below and let me know what you thought of this video and of Halloween Resurrection.
Hey, Mikey! Happy fucking Halloween!